Josh, for sure, service can dissolve the ego and bring you into the fullness of yourself. If, this is the disclaimer, if it's really in your heart, in your unfolding to go down that path. You see, if it's coming from the mind, because we think it's a good idea, we know what's best for the world and how to help the world, and so I'm going to go out and I'm going to go save the world, this Messiah complex. I met a few people like that. Of course, they don't know it. You never know it, you know. If it's like that, then no. Because then you're going to be in rivalry with people who don't support your cause. And you're justified. You're like, don't you know though, this needs to be done. We have to save the dolphins or the whales, like right now. We got to save the trees. You need to plant a tree every day. If you don't care about the environment or the universe or anything, and damn you. This is the inner feeling and dialogue that takes place sometimes. But karma yoga, which is another term for this, this is see, we don't choose this though. This is my point. You can't choose this. And it's not better. People like Mother Teresa, what's the guy's name? You know me, I'm bad with names. Neem Karola Baba or something. I'd say these are karma yogis. And they forget, they self-sacrifice, they forget their self by serving others. Mother Teresa was a real good example of that. But that's not any better or worse than, let's say, somebody who just sits in solitude for 10 years. And he's burning the ego through that way, you see? Now the mind, from someone who's doing service, that's coming from the mind though. No, what I'm saying is someone who's identified with doing service, because that's coming from their mind. They're not doing service because it's an organic unfolding. If it's coming from their mind, they're going to dismiss these other people who aren't in the service realm, who they're just doing more looking and more introspection, more solitude. There's a guy that went to Muji's, crashed his satsang in India once, and he brings this little boy up to the microphone. So this guy, he wrote the letter, pretends it like it's from the little boy, and then the little boy, he's writing the letter, and the little boy's like, can't you, I'm paraphrasing big time, but we're having a lot of trouble, and we don't have food, and we don't have money. Would you please help us? And he was saying that's from the little boy. But Muji, you can't. Someone who's awake to their self, you can't trip them up. You just can't. And Muji's like, I'm not going to fall for that. He says, your whole attitude's wrong, You come in here, you're crashing my satsang and bringing your projections and ideas in here. If it's in your heart to serve people, then go do that. And you'll attract those people who want to be part of that. God uses so many different vehicles. There's so many ways to serve, man. There's so many ways to serve. Millions. Which one's better, See, when we surrender our life, I'm going to make a video because surrender is like the most important principle, but it's not a conscious thing we can do. It's a subconscious act, this surrender. So then you can be like, well, how do I surrender? Yeah, we'll get into that, but I'm saying surrender, this is the main key to everything. When we got to surrender not just our dirt, not just our negative parts. We got to surrender our good intentions too, our noble ideas. We got to surrender everything. When we surrender everything, then the universe will use us as we're supposed to be used. That may include serving. It may not. Sometimes we can serve just sitting out here in nature. If somebody just sat here for 10 years, but they're vibing, meaning they're aware of their true nature, those currents are getting sent out everywhere. So they're also helping. The mind cannot understand this or judge this. But if we surrender, we're guaranteed that we are going to be living in, you can say, our highest destiny in Dharma. If we're supposed to serve, it'll tell us how to serve. And it will tell us in which form, which way to serve. The reason service, the reason that, what's awakening? Dissolution of this tight identity with ego. Ego's individuality, autonomous existence. Its essence is that, and there's nothing wrong with that. We couldn't exist if we wouldn't know that we existed if there wasn't this seeming ego, this seeming separation from the source, so that then we can taste the source. I've said this in many different ways. We need the ego, but what happens? It gets tainted. It becomes very selfish and self-centered. It becomes all about me, me, me. So when we serve, we're forgetting about ourself. We're focused on something else other than ourself. When we're not here, when we're absent of thinking about ourselves and the ego all the time, all of a sudden there's a presence of you can say a higher power or a serenity. That's automatic. The St. Francis prayer says it's by self-forgetting that one finds. That's a good prayer. You gotta look at that on Google. It's better to comfort rather than be comforted. Better to understand rather than to be understood. It's the total opposite of how the ego operates. That can lead to an awakening because the consciousness, it realizes its own essence because it's not so identified now with the human ego. So when the consciousness breaks these ties of identity with the ego, it has nowhere else to go but back. It turns back on itself. And something becomes aware, it becomes self-aware. But see, that happens automatic. That's not something that we can't go out and say, okay, I got it now, the mind. I'm going to go serve. I'm going to go work at a soup kitchen and serve, and then I'm going to wait for this awakening. No, that's what I'm saying. It has to be organic and natural. The life force has to be doing this for you. You got to surrender, though, to know what that feels like and how that works. And when we're serving, we can't have expectations and projections. True service, true karma yoga, you can't be running the show. You've surrendered. God has you serving. And then maybe the mind will say, well, yeah, but this isn't, I'm serving, so therefore the situation should look different. I'm putting all this effort and work in, but things aren't working. I remember that movie, Machine Gun Preacher, and he was in Africa. He was a preacher. He was like Robert Duvall a little bit, an apostle. I like when they make these movies where the preachers aren't these really goody-goodies, you know. This preacher had a machine gun, and he went to Africa. This was when they were hiring, the people there had all these kids with guns, they built an army just with kids and just ruthless, you know, just killing people like crazy. And he went over there and he was trying to help. I don't remember why he was there. What actually got him there. I don't remember the background, but he's there trying to help, and it wasn't working. People were still getting killed. Innocent people, you know. So now that would be an example of how the mind and ego would say, wait a minute now, I'm risking my life, I'm putting my whole heart in this, I'm trying to help the people, and they just keep getting killed. What's going on, God? Something's wrong here. You see, the mind has expectations and projections of how this should look, you see, because it says, I'm doing this, I'm doing it. See, it's not that the universal flow's doing it. If you know the universal flow's doing it, the results aren't your business. You can't be worrying about the results. You're not even you're doing it. You see what I mean? Like, there's an appearance that you're doing it, but inside you know you're not doing it. I'm not making these videos. I'm just not. It looks like it. Looks like there's a body doing it. There's a sensation of me enjoying it, and that whole thing. But I did not choose to do this. I didn't sit down and say, well, what should I do now? Should I go to school and be a doctor, or should I go be a lawyer, or should I make videos on YouTube? No. I just found myself doing it. I don't even know how it happened, to be honest with you. I'd have to actually think, like, how did this even start? Therefore, it's not my business, like, who's watching it, how many views I get, whatever the things are that people think about. I don't know what they are because I don't think about it. Whatever the big goals are and expectations that somebody would have if they made videos coming from their mind or ego. Because the mind and ego has a long list of stuff it wants, it needs, and wants to make happen. I don't have that. And it's a burden to have that. But how do you come into that? How do you not be so involved with your so-called life? You got to realize that there's not really a you living this life. Okay, how do you do that? Well, you can't do that because you're the problem. Okay, how do I see that? Well, you can't see that because that thing can't see those things. You see what I mean? We can keep going in circles. Now, I'm doing it for fun. Like, I'm not just trying to be clever. You can feel energetically like I'm having fun here, but I'm also talking truth. So we're gonna get into that in the next video, because that's a separate video. How to surrender. How does this individual me surrender? Because it can't surrender. It's like how do you turn off your self-preservation instinct? How does the human being turn that off? You can't. That's deep downloaded software. You can't turn that off. That's like core stuff. Well, what do you do? How is it then that there's some yogis who can meditate, they switch off their breath, they switch off their heart? You've just transcended the self-preservation instinct if you're doing that. Well, they didn't do it. You see? That's the whole thing. The universe is doing everything, but somehow this human identity has to dissolve enough to where it keeps a little bit. There's still some ego, otherwise it wouldn't realize this stuff. You see, you need some kind of autonomous, separate individual self to realize this, but it gets dissolved enough to where it doesn't interfere with this realization. This is the true purpose of a spiritual practice. This is what we're trying to talk about here too. All right, have a good day.